Hey, Cynthia. Hey, Catherine. Nice to see y'all on. And hey, everyone else. It's been quite some time since we last all met back in January. So really good to see some great familiar faces on the call. Let's go ahead and kick us off with introductions. If everyone in the Zoom room can say their name, organization, and your favorite flower, because you know springtime has just now rolled in and a lot is in bloom, although allergies are not the best right now. But if anybody would like to start, and maybe we can popcorn it.
Hey, Elaine. This is Catherine. As co-host, I just wanted to thank you for kicking it off. I did my best to upload into the agenda, and you totally caught the theme of both allergies and springtime with the flowers. So apologies, I have to join from a virtual location today. So this is Catherine with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, and one of my favorite flowers is the California poppy.
Cool. If we want to popcorn around, I'll go ahead and go Jessica Olson. I'm with the Air District. And my favorite flower is peony, particularly like just really vibrant pink ones. And I'll pass it to Margot.
Hi, I'm Margot Prowse. I'm a resident in the CSC for AB 617 for Stockton. And I just came in from outdoors. My orange tree is blooming next to my lilacs, which are blooming. And I love poppies, and my lupins are blooming. And it's like, it's very happy time. I love the smells, you know, fragrant flowers make me very happy. And I'll pass it to Kyle.
Oh, thank you, Margo. Hey, everybody, I'm Kyle Gough. I am with CARB, of course, working on the CARMOI program and community air protection incentives. You know, I would say there was like a 2-week period when I was in kindergarten, I think, where I was obsessed with sunflowers. But that's not held true these days. Maybe lavender is my favorite flower. But yeah, I'm gonna popcorn it over to Cynthia.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, she, her, hers with CVAC. And I would say my favorite flower is going to be a yellow rose. And I will popcorn it off to, let's see, Jessica.
I went, but I will pass it to Scott.
Hi, good afternoon, Scott Walt with the California Air Resources Board. Let me see, we've got neighbors with wisteria on their kind of arbor that wafts into our backyard this time of year. So from a smell perspective, I am loving that purple wisteria that we get to smell all day and in the evening. My favorite cut flower, and actually also a regular flower, is a bearded iris. I have many fond memories of my grandparents with their tons of varieties of bearded iris. So that would be my favorite other flower. And I will pass it over to Janine.
Thank you. Janine Tackett with the Air District in the Grants Department. And Scott, you took my flower, irises, for probably the same reason. My mom and my grandmother both grew an abundant assortment of different irises. So definitely one that is close to my heart. And I think Stephanie still needs to go.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie and I'm with the Air District and Air Quality Specialist. And I think I have to agree with Catherine, like that this time of year where, and also Margot, like the California natives like poppies and lupin are like my favorite, especially like when you go up to the mountains and you can see all of them, like fields of them. It's quite a sight. And I think Grant still has to go also.
Afternoon, sorry, I can't be on camera today. I'm sort of on the move. But Grant Kirkpatrick, I'm a program manager 3 at the city of Stockton, overseeing the city's TCC implementation grant, as well as sort of general sustainability portfolio as we try to build it out. And I know my partner loves peonies, and I always try to get those for him. So I feel like I've sort of co-opted those as my favorite, but it's between that and roses. I don't know if anyone else hasn't gone yet.
I think I'm actually the last person. Hey everyone, Elaine Labson, she or hers, Little Manila Rising. And my favorite flower would have to be, it's like two. So I really love like white orchids. And then there's this like Filipino flower called a sampaguita, which I was able to use during my wedding, which I was really excited for. And then I do see someone with a UC Davis email who just popped in. We are doing introductions right now. If you can go ahead and introduce yourself, your organization, if any, and your favorite flower.
Oh, sure. Hi, my name's Kyle. I'm from UC Davis. I'm under the laboratory of Dr. Jonathan London and just here to observe. And my favorite flower, oh, I don't know. Sunflowers. I like sunflowers. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome. And thanks everyone for being able to share your favorite flower. Yes, springtime in bloom. So we get to see all these like beautiful Mother Nature flowers all coming in, and what a really great sight to see, especially like when they're like all wild and nice and up in the hills. Those are like also my favorite too. I'm gonna go ahead and move us along on the agenda. If maybe Valley Air District can do a refresh on the measures that we have for our weatherization and indoor air quality, just so that we could get a little recap with what's going on there, and seeing what, more so like an overview of where we're at on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. And that was such a fun, fun icebreaker. So thanks so much for putting that together. Yes, I can provide, and what I'll do is I'll also just maybe walk us through on our subcommittee page for indoor air quality. We have a little call out, and I will just share that on the screen as sort of a reminder. And there's kind of two different kind of aspects to it, as it's kind of titled Incentives Program for Residential Air Filtration and Weatherization. But in reality, one of the goals of this was to both incentivize having proper indoor air filtration. And I think kind of based on some recent conversations we've had both at our first subcommittee meeting and sort of conversations in between, maybe that looks more like an indoor in-home air purifier unit, although that's something I think the subcommittee is still working out, as well as making sure that purifying or air purification happening in the home isn't done in vain, and making sure we couple that with letting folks know how to take advantage of weatherization programs that actually already exist out there, to help make sure that they secure or weatherize places that where the air can kind of infiltrate the home, even if all the doors are closed and the windows are closed. So that's like providing weather stripping for doors or windows, perhaps helping offset the cost of running things like indoor air filtration or a higher efficiency air conditioning unit by linking them up with some of these incentives programs that offer low cost energy, or can help lower their energy bills. Lots of different programs that are outlined here, including what's called the Home Energy Assistance Program, or HEAP. We have $1 million in here, and so really that is targeted towards what we're talking about here, and driving toward a project plan that we would then present to CARB, and then kind of simultaneously then work on what it sounds like perhaps an RFP to really, and maybe I'll stop sharing because this is now just looking at you all and coordinating, but to really see who out there is able to administer a program to help us get indoor air filtration units to homes throughout the community. And so if I could just recall where we ended last time, we kind of broadly talked about a couple of different programs that are happening at a couple of different air districts. One, not really actually, they're related to, but not directly funded by CAP funds, meaning they're related to 617 communities, but they're actually funded in different ways. And that's, we talked specifically about Bay Area and San Diego. We spoke with the co-leads, Scott and myself and Stephanie spoke with a colleague down in San Diego who's running their program. He provided us with just kind of a good set of background information, maybe even some pros and cons of the way they did their program. Theirs was kind of born out of a different thing. And so maybe we can take some lessons learned, but also acknowledge that what might be allowable under the CAP guidelines might be different than what was allowable in some of these other communities. And so I think where we landed is that we wanted to come back, maybe talk a little bit with this group about some of the opportunities and options as we move forward on what kind of direction we want to take this program. So that's kind of the high level overview. Co-leads, I'm not sure if I missed anything, or anyone else that was kind of a part of the last couple of months of this work. If I missed anything, or there's maybe some details that we need to discuss as well.
Thanks, Jessica. I think that's pretty much what I understood in terms of like high level, and that they are, at least in San Diego, are about to implement their program. And so this is all a brand new thing that they are bringing to the community, which makes us choose like what kind of options there are, and what is best for the Stockton community and really the Central Valley when we think of like a model that we want to adopt. In terms of like high level for Bay Area, we've been able to meet with some folks, and specifically with Contra Costa, because we work with them on the asthma mitigation end. And so they shared more so like weatherization tips of who we can connect to. And one of them happens to be a California Department of Public Health person who does like weatherization in the Central Valley. And I'm wondering if those are like maybe some resources we can share out, because since weatherization on this measure is more so education based versus us having to go into the homes and actually do the weatherization, because I know that will cost even a lot more than $1 million would really allocate. But just like being able to do that. But I think one of the challenges there is just knowing who in the county, specifically San Joaquin County, are also offering weatherization programs to help align with with what we want to see.
I think that's something, so in just what we've done in other communities is exactly that. We've identified who specifically for within the county, but then who specifically we can partner with to bring them to the committee. And this outreach would be direct, and maybe they come to a committee and say, here are the options, the opportunities, and the ways that you can take advantage of existing programs. And to add to your point, not only is like the $1 million in here, I think was intended kind of looking at the number of homes and what we thought an air filtration unit would cost, on average, I think is, from my recollection, how that number was arrived at. But to your point, also just leveraging what's already out there. I think there are a lot of weatherization, well, not a lot, but there is a weatherization program out there, to your point, that happens on the state level that's then implemented on the county level. That's what we found in Fresno and in Kern. And then I believe, and we even listed on here, San Joaquin County Human Services Agency, I believe, is the contact that originally we were looking into. And so that's something we can, and obviously we have the city listening in now too on this call, but also, other partners that we've already connected with that can maybe be an action for us at the district to even set up that contact and that call, and we can have with the co-leads and whoever else wants to join as an action item.
Ooh, I actually have information relevant to this discussion. I when this was months ago now, I had grand plans to look further into this, and I've had no time to actually do anything. But I checked in with our California Climate Investments folks here in CARB, the folks who basically set the guidelines and the rules for how the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund money is spent. So like cap incentives are subject to the same set of CCI requirements. There's over 50 different programs funded through like dozen or 24 different government agencies. CARB does a lot of them, but there's a bunch of other agencies besides. Anyways, CCI does have a low-income weatherization program. It's managed by the California Department of Community Services and Development, which is an agency I've never actually heard of besides this context. So I can drop a couple of links into the chat about some of their stuff. No, I haven't actually looked up any of this stuff, so this program may be less relevant than I'm hoping.
That is actually the exact program I was referencing. That's exactly the department. Yep.
Oh.
So it sounds like it's very relevant.
Yeah, maybe it's very relevant then. Perfect. Yep. Cool.
And so there, and I'll drop in a chat. So the California, oh my gosh, I'm already, Community Services Department, CSD, is the one that's the state version, and then there's done at the county level. I'm going to also drop in, this is the county level, the San Joaquin County Human Services Agency version of what you just discussed. And so there's a weatherization program here. And I think talking with these folks about kind of, it's really light information on their website. There's not a lot of like materials or outreach or like how to get involved, and like, let's take advantage. We have a captive audience, we have residents. If there is opportunity, let's bring it. If there's not opportunity, maybe we have that discussion and say, okay, look, if we can't weatherize these homes, and that's one of our measures, what can we do to leverage this funding or leverage just our partnerships and get this going?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm wondering too, one of the recommendations that Michael Kent from Contra Costa mentioned, and that's because he's with the public health department, is that the public health department should be involved as well. Although with our asthma mitigation work, they haven't been really involved locally in that way, but I'm wondering if this is a way to help bridge that as we are like thinking about our plan, our implementation plan, and maybe they have more connections to some of the folks within the home, if there's like connections there, or if there's a contact that we could potentially work with at public health.
Yeah.
I have just such a contact sent to me by my CTI guy. It is where did his name go? Greg Kelsey. Why am I not seeing his name in this email that I have up? Okay, yeah, there it is. It's
while you're pulling up that contact. Oh, I was going to say, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Kelsey Craig here at ARB. He's the CCI program contact, so he's kind of like the liaison that touches base with the actual folks from CSD. So maybe one step removed from what we really want.
It's always good to have multiple contacts. So I was going to share, I just threw it in here, but just as an example of what program is available. And this looks like it was updated a year ago. So it doesn't seem like it's, in terms of some of the things that I see, not crazy out of date. So it still seems, this is the type of, this is what you can apply for. So free repair, replacement of all these different utility type, or, big appliances, lots of different installation offerings. All of these say free. So there's just a lot of opportunity. And I think to your point, Elaine, of just like bringing awareness to it and finding that opportunity. And so if we can maybe connect with whoever here, and maybe in that same, whether it's the same meeting or a separate meeting, we have a discussion with a public health person. I think that could be a really good next step for just like, even outside of all of the other details we have to figure out for the weatherization part of this.
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I know we've been focusing a little bit more on the indoor air quality, which is of course the bulk of this work, but having that like extra piece to be able to get to that measure, part of the measure. Was there anything else in terms of, I think if Catherine's able to chime in, or maybe Cynthia, on being able to share any of the additional work that's been happening in the background?
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. I've been on these calls as well, but there's definitely a lot of need to be able to connect with the public health departments and to be able to share that information a little bit widely. There's definitely a lot of there was a lot of great conversations had in the background about the public health aspect of it, and how folks are interested in ways that we can expand this in an accessible way, in like multiple languages and multiple in an accessible way ultimately. But yeah, that's just something I'd like to add about that, language accessibility and resources in other languages as well.
And I think one of the things that was also like brought up too in both like Bay Area and San Diego, or more questions, is like how we are going to be creating the criteria around this, like who would be eligible for it, aside from being in the AB 617 community? Like, do we want to prioritize like based on health needs, or based on like closest to like a pollution source, or like and those are things that we can definitely plan out as we are moving forward. But those are definitely some of the things that also like questions or that was raised as well.
I'm curious, so just on its face, I know this is an oversimplification, so it's just meant to be like some food for thought, is on its face, and just kind of looking back at notes, the concept of if an standalone air purifier costs $500, like up to $500, which is actually really expensive. I have a really nice, like robust one that I think is like, it was like $250. So say it's $500 and that includes multiple years of like filter change outs for this. That's 2,000 homes. And so maybe working from that assumption, do we then say, okay, is that, you know, maybe like you're saying, maybe we target or prioritize based on maybe some factors that you mentioned, but do we want to limit ourselves in such a way that, you know, or maybe we do a check-in after so many years and change the program slightly? Do we want to limit ourselves in such a way that we're now not targeting, you know, we're not getting enough people that are eligible, that are interested, or even, to be honest, do we acknowledge that everyone in the 617 community, although slightly differently impacted, is potentially, right, they're all within a priority underserved community impacted by air quality, and maybe, you know, just kind of food for thought out there. Not that I'm not saying that we shouldn't think about these things, but in order to streamline and get maybe as many people help as possible, do we want to make sure that it's not so cumbersome that, you know, there's a lot of factors? So and I'm saying this all with, and Janine knows this really well, we have lots of programs where there's like a strict eligibility, you know, it's low income at its very strictest, and you have to provide all this information. So we're definitely used to that. And if that's maybe the route we want to take, we can accommodate that. But just kind of food for thought on, you know, we have 2,000 potentially, that's like if up to, maybe we can even maximize that if we find a unit or a partner that's willing, that can help us find a unit that's maybe cheaper, and we can maximize and find, you know, biggest bang for your buck or whatever.
Just a thought on that. In some of our other programs, we utilize enrollment in other types of low-income programs as a qualifying factor. So, you know, if that's something that is decided to kind of move in that direction, to have some type of level of eligibility criteria, we might look at somebody's enrollment in other types of assistance type programs as a qualifying factor. So that way it's fairly easy. They just show us proof that they've qualified for this other government assistance or low income program, and we use that as the qualifying factor. So just a thought there to add on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, thanks all for those thoughts. This is Catherine with CVAC. I was just going to add, in terms of thinking about the program long term, that I definitely think, you know, there's a lot of potential demand for this. And so looking at the other models from other regions will be really helpful to kind of test out and then see what kind of demand there is in Stockton, and also recognize that the Valley is a really big region and there may be a lot of communities that need this type of resource. And so we can kind of pilot to some degree and figure out what the different parameters might be, and that there's definitely a lot of potential for expansion, and also that necessarily we're going to need to test for a little while and kind of figure out how to do it specifically in our region and make sure that the most impacted households are really getting those services first, and then how we roll it out. Because obviously everybody is impacted and everybody needs these resources to some degree. And there's a lot of attention right now, particularly around like wildfires and, you know, having clean air centers and things like that. So making sure that we're doing it well overall, and that the most impacted households get the relief first.
I think it's a great point. And to just to add and like lift up Catherine's comments, we have been at the district level to other communities, really elevating the work done in this subcommittee as that pilot. So I totally agree with Catherine in that this is people will be looking to this. That's a great point. I wonder if this is, again, maybe high level food for thought and maybe something we just kind of kick around, is I wonder too, to maximize that there is an thought or concept, again, as we move forward. And I do see Scott's question. I think that's a relevant piece to the puzzle too, of like looking at what is 2000, you know, in relation to all of the community, but also looking to, is there maybe you know, maybe it's based on demand or based on what we can see the need for, but maybe there is, you know, we reserve some level of funding, maybe it's 100% of funding for like the most in need households, but you know, if you're not low income and you're not in need, maybe you get $200 towards this, or, you know, it's something in that regard. It's not fully funded, but you still get it. That actually lets us maximize, we get more into more households because we're using less funding for those that can maybe provide that, which almost helps us lift up those that need, you know, the 100% paid for version. And that's something, again, to Janine's point about the programs we've run programs at the district where there are kind of tiers of how much you get funded. Although, you know, just kind of thinking out loud, and maybe this is something, maybe I wonder in other subcommittees, and I'm just kind of for Elaine and Cynthia and Catherine, well, really everyone, but kind of just thinking from the co-lead's perspective, is in other subcommittees, we've kind of arrived at certain points where there's just like a couple of like driving, like kind of like forks in the road or questions we want to answer and kind of see where we want to start going down. And I wonder if this is one of them, of like, all right, do we on its face, because 2000 maybe isn't a lot once we kind of get down to brass tacks, and do we kind of make a decision, okay, now at this point, we're going to make a decision to kind of pursue a highest need first, or first come, first serve. And if it's highest need first, maybe there's a decision on like, okay, how do we assess that need? Is it lowest income, or is it like geographically assessed, like Elaine was mentioning? And so I wonder if we kind of think up a couple of those types of questions, and then we can work offline, and then maybe even send out a survey to kind of get some direction from everyone as to some of these questions, because I think they're really important. And I think driving toward creating a project plan for folks to review, these are going to be the key things that drive kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that would be a really great next step, just thinking about now that we have some background and idea of like what's going on with the different areas. And then I do see Catherine with your hand raised, and maybe we can discuss that out further, but I do want to hear Catherine's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just on my phone, so trying to figure out how best to interact. But as a geographer that has helped develop tools where we look at multiple factors, I would say it's probably going to be a combination of different things that we'll want to look at, including whether they're within the community and what the greatest need is. So I definitely think that those parameters will be important in terms of initial priorities. And again, recognizing that it's kind of a rollout where really, you know, optimally over time, we want to reach everybody, but how do we do it in a way that targets the communities and the households that need it first in the AB 617 community, and use that as a pilot to figure out how to roll it out more broadly.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I do want to plug in, because we're working on that asthma mitigation, and we do have referral lists from Health Plan of San Joaquin with folks who have asthma, if that is something we wanted to consider as well. Or bringing some of the representatives or even case managers into the conversation for when we do get there, to help with that criteria.
I like that. I do want to also think, I'm just going to say this because I think it's an important context I didn't provide when we were debriefing a little bit with just now about what we learned in some of our discussions. One of the things that the co-leads and the district and CARB heard from some of these discussions were, because these were all also pilot programs, they did kind of, it wasn't just monitoring they did, or sorry, a filtration they did, but they also did some monitoring and some other like factors. And I would say that kind of I wonder what you would hear when I say, in kind of looking at this and maximizing what we can do for like the folks in most need within the community with this like pilot set of funding. Because again, I agree with Catherine, and I think a lot of folks at the district across the district are hearing kind of Catherine's thoughts about like, okay, this needs to be more broadly as we think about wildfire season, which is an unfortunate season that happens now, of like, how are we going to protect people in the next few months? But I'm just wondering what you all think of when I think of this program on the Stockton 617 level. I'm thinking of how do we get filters in people's homes, and not necessarily those other, sounds like from talking to Nick, complicated factors of like these sensors that they were installing and getting hooked up to Wi-Fi. And although important, I think for studies, I think at this point we're maybe past that part of the study. Like, I think it's like acknowledging that we know that at some point air filtration is needed and it's helpful in the home. We're now at the point where, okay, we're wondering more what is best for assessing who needs it and following up with them maybe after. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know it was part of the discussion. And I think it just, from a district's perspective, and I think from our priorities as a CSC to get as many people as a part of this program as possible, it makes most sense to support this funding for the filters and replacement filters themselves. So I'd offer that.
Yeah. And I definitely agree, like being able to arm folks as we're getting to wildfire season, thinking about like the timeline on what this can look like. What do next steps look like for us to see like what a design plan could look like, whether we're integrating both Bay Area, San Diego, or even coming up with our own model to see what kind of things we would like to see be rolled out into the AB 617 area. And I'm wondering too, is if part of that process as we're like designing it out, if there will be a participatory process in this with this with our indoor air quality subcommittee on what that looks like.
Oh yeah, definitely. We foresee bringing the project plan to you all, as well as when we foresee it being an RFP. I think I mentioned this the last meeting, but for those that aren't there, we foresee this being similar to San Diego and Bay Area. We foresee a third party like running it, but in order to see who that third party is, we want you all involved, not only in the RFP criteria, kind of selection criteria, but also, you know, approving and working with whoever selected on their scope of work. So certainly, yeah, we think it's super participatory. I don't see us going forward with an RFP without the subcommittee's recommendation, and perhaps also similar to what we just did with the project plan in for vegetative barriers, also the full committee's support, you know, as we move forward.
And Catherine, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks. So definitely support the focus on kind of the immediate protections for people while thinking about weatherization as an important kind of mid to long term and really important complementary goal. And I don't know, you know, as somebody who's not exclusively working in Stockton, so definitely would be interested in feedback on this, but also just wanted to flag, if we are thinking about this as a pilot for broader regional issues, that one thing that we've encountered a lot in other communities and other parts of the San Joaquin Valley is that a lot of people still rely on swamp coolers to cool, and that creates like a whole other set of issues, because that's actually pulling outdoor air indoors and concentrating it, which creates kind of like a different set of issues that there are actually some pilots testing, like if there are appropriate filtration systems for that. So just want to flag like that there's always the constant tension between we need the immediate protections and we absolutely want to provide that, and we also want to make sure that longer term, if people's homes aren't weatherized, that's still going to be a problem because the outdoor air is going to come inside. So, you know, how do we make those complementary? And there are existing pots of funding and programs for weatherization, so maybe we don't need to spend a lot of money there, but just making sure that even if that's where the money gets spent on the indoor air filters, is that we're also still thinking about the weatherization piece and some of the complicating factors, like if households are using swamp coolers.
I wonder if just knowing that some of this other stuff we're talking about is going to take a little bit of time together to go back and forth about the project plan and the RFP. In the meantime, I wonder if like a really immediate action is to have, again, that conversation about the weatherization programs that exist, and then bring, like, maybe it's the part of maybe this group's update at the Stockton meeting. If we get a chance to talk to that group, that person before the next Stockton meeting, I literally have a draft email I'm about to send to that person, is that our update is, hey, look, here's this program, here's how it works, you know, maybe we can get a flyer, send out I mean, we can start getting people involved, but then we can also work on, through our outreach subcommittee, which has been very, very active, how do we leverage our resources to Catherine's point, to like not wait too long for some of the immediate, I mean, even just removing a swamp cooler and not even adding air filtration might help someone. Or getting weatherization without doing some of these things might be just so helpful, and an easy thing to do if they're just programs people don't know about, right?
So, okay, if I go ahead. Hi, so if I'm hearing you, Jessica, you're thinking in terms of getting the filtered air filters out there, first come, first serve, quickly, get the word out there, or?
No, I think we were thinking, it sounds like we've kind of landed, but maybe we'll send out a survey to kind of get kind of general thoughts, but it sounds like we're landing a little bit more on highest needs first. And how we assess what those highest needs are. It doesn't sound like we've 100% landed on, but we have some ideas about whether it's low income or asthma status or location, or a combination of all three or more.
Yeah, I like the combination, but I also like that this group is looking at the various other entities that offer services and tying those together and getting that education out there as well. That's good.
Yeah, and it is so important that if you're going to filter your air in your home, we're not filtering outside air, right? First of all, that's just ineffective with energy. It's obviously not going to be effective for your air quality. So,
well, because wasn't that form you showed from the HSA?
Yes.
Had, included air conditioning.
It did. It included air conditioning.
So there's a possibility.
Yeah, there's lots of great kind of combo. I mean, yeah, lots of good opportunities here. And so, yeah, I'll just offer me kind of whatever combination of availabilities the co-leads have, and I have district folks and Scott on here as well, is just to ask those questions of that agency if they're available, and maybe we, like I said, we have updates maybe for the committee in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that would be good, or really great in between now until our next meeting to get some background information, or maybe they can, if we are able to get a contact, maybe can come and present at our next CSC indoor air quality meeting. I do want to look at time. Is there anything else we wanted to add on in terms of our research updates before moving on to next steps? Awesome. Well, what I'm hearing is that we are going to try to get connected to HSA and be able to get that going. We are in the beginning discussions about what that design plan can look like. And maybe we can start strategizing that at our next upcoming meetings, and be able to share out a little bit more of what can criteria look like, what does a priority look like, as a quick recap from what has been said. But I did also want to circle back as we are going into our draft program design. And I know with Catherine and I being at capacity sometimes as being co-leads, and for the folks who are on the line, but just also wanting to understand what maybe your role can play as in our indoor air quality subcommittee as we are drafting that program, or where do you envision yourself with your capacity moving forward? And so that's almost like a closing out as well, unless there's anything else we wanted to add on as next steps too.
Elaine, you're asking for other folks, members of the subcommittee, not for the district, correct? When you asked the question?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. This is Catherine with CVAC as co-facilitator. Just want to really appreciate how much time you and Air District staff and Cynthia on my team have put into doing some of the background research. Definitely feel like that's an important ongoing component as we figure out how to tailor it specifically to the Valley and figuring out other resources and other existing programs that we might be able to pull in. So just looking forward to continuing to do research and gather information and bring that back to the group. And I think if I remember correctly, we agreed to meet every other month. So that'll give us some time in between to continue to pull information together. And maybe next time it sounds like we're at least headed in the direction of being able to talk about some of the eligibility criteria that we might have for this particular program. So thanks, everybody.
There's not a specific ask of you, Harb, at the next meeting, although Scott, I will put you on this email that I'm about to send.
Sorry, I just so everybody knows, I dropped Jessica a private message. And I was like, I had a distraction. I heard Carb mentioned, and I was like, oh my God, did I miss a specific ask? So anyhow, didn't mean to disrupt. My apologies.
Without seeing, it doesn't say direct unless I open it, and so it's like trying to be responsive.
That's what I get for trying. That's what I get for trying to be sneaky, I guess.
Well, I think we're good on our end, co-leads, but I just really appreciate everyone's support and thoughtfulness in this program. We're really looking forward to it, and I don't think I can iterate enough how we do keep, and we're trying, that's why we're so supportive of whatever this process looks like, because we do keep pointing Fresno and Shafter and now Arvin to like, hey, we're working really closely with Stockton. We think this could be a great model, so we're looking forward to this.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for your input and being able to share what's been happening on the ground or on in the background as well. If there are any other things that should be shared, go ahead and share them out. Otherwise, I think we're all ready to go. We do have some time left over to take back on your wonderful Tuesday. And I do see in the chat, our next meeting will be May 24th, the fourth Tuesday at 4 p.m., which means I'll already be graduated from grad school, and I'm really excited about that. Other than that, we'll see everyone at the next AB 617 meeting on April 6th. Otherwise, please keep updated with the emails for any updates, and then refer back to the notes for anything you'd like to recap.
Awesome. Thank you, and congrats, it's so soon. Yay.
I know, so excited.
There's probably a lot of work between now and then, I'm guessing, but yeah. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.